back, Mark. Okay, well, welcome. Good evening, everybody. Tonight we are pretty excited to talk about ACF chapter growth and what individuals are doing in their own chapter. We do have Chef Chris from Pittsburgh, um, and we have Mark Brown here from New Hampshire. And we should be able to get a good perspective from both of their chapters of what was worked. So I'm going to start right in there. If Chef Chris, if you'd like to begin and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing in your chapter.
Sure. Yeah, so I admittedly have not been in the ACF forever, like most folks probably have. But I came into the ACF in culinary school in 2012. Really stayed out of it for a large part of my career, and then I got brought back in around 2021, 2022. 2022, I joined the board. 2023, I was a treasurer. In 2024, I became the president. Um, I'm going to share my screen because I just so everyone can see like some of the things that we put together as a board. So when I joined, or what kind of when I got voted as president, um, there was quite a bit of things that I wanted to do. Uh, More importantly, what I wanted to do is make a lot of changes. And like anything in life, it starts with mise en place, right? So there was a lot of preparation that went into the presidency. The elections happened in November, so I knew what was happening by December. I started putting before that even happened, I started putting candidates who I thought would be young and hungry and interested in making changes to our chapter, taking it to new directions. Um, and then I let the membership kind of decide what they wanted to do. I was lucky enough to then get a board that was pretty much new. Um, we had some folks in there that were able to inform on the history of the chapter, uh, but ultimately we ended up with the youngest and most diverse board in the history of the chapter. So I was really fortunate about that. From there, I started putting together a set of plans from talking to the membership, talking to people who were disgruntled with the ACF. And then I put together kind of a task force, if you will, but more so what that was just reaching out to all the living past presidents of the chapter. And then I sent them this, which was the agenda that I wanted to put forth in my presidency. Um, this was crafted to address a lot of the concerns that I had with the chapter. Uh, because one of the things I hear most about is how do we grow membership? How do we grow membership? And then in many of our board meetings was why aren't people coming? Or they have this awful idea that what has the ACF done for me lately? In the ACF, that's the wrong attitude to have, and just these things that kept kind of going back in circles over and over and over again that didn't really get us anywhere. So what I wanted to kind of address was what could the ACF do for people, right? I knew that there were a set of laws that we couldn't kind of breach, right? So we couldn't enrich our members by giving them money or anything like that. So what could we do to give back to our membership that is more valuable than just networking, education, certification? Because the ACF primarily does a few things: networking, certifications, and education. Quite frankly, our chapter wasn't doing any of it. It was the same 20 people showing up, 20, 30 people showing up to every meeting. So there was no real networking there. You can do more networking going on social media than you could going to an ACF chapter meeting. And the meetings were, quite frankly, just a bunch of vendors trying to sell to the membership, which wasn't very fun or engaging. So I took their suggestions. I had my own suggestions. I met with my future board, got their suggestions, put it all into one agenda, came out to about 20 some pages. And then I sent that to all the past living presidents. And then I got their thoughts on it. Then incorporated that into the final document. And then from there, we just started to hit the ground running. I explained what my plan was, explained what the goal was, and I had strategies for every single one of them. What was our financial strategy? I won't bore you with every single page from every single thing, but some of the things that we accomplished was eliminating our office space. There was an a huge waste of space, which was the office, which when we ran the numbers accounted for 2/3 of our operating budget. Um, so we got rid of that, which saved us a lot of money. We made sure that we were putting forth a budget, and that's something we're going to be putting forth every year. Uh, we are doing, we started doing other cost saving measures, and negotiating better rates on stuff as opposed to just taking the prices that were coming to us. We're doing more public facing events and fundraising, and we also started our own nonprofit, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We also kind of structured the ACF better. We Instead of everyone using their personal emails, we created official ACF emails. So now it doesn't matter who's in office. If you were a a partner before and you wanted to get in touch with the president, you simply now email president at acfpittsburgh.org. You want to get in touch with the treasurer at acfpittsburgh.org. It's very structured now, so it doesn't matter. You don't have to track down who's in office to see how you can partner with the ACF. Um, in doing so, that also gave us the ability to meet online with teams and also gave us a OneDrive so we can have all of our documentation stored in a central location that everyone could have access to. So everyone, meaning the officers, so we could all work off the same documents, streamlining how efficiently that we worked. Uh, Next, we started to overhaul our communications. We actually brought on one of our past board members as a communications director, and in doing so, we ensured that she would be at every ACF meeting and at every ACF board meeting, as well as the national convention. So she could be up to date on what's going on, how to communicate, how to make sure that she is working with the strategies that we have in place. And then because of the transparency that we're trying to have, we posted the strategy on our website. So anyone can read what our strategies are, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. We created a committee just for communications. Again, we standardized the emails. And then we also started working on bylaws immediately. Every single president I talked to said, "Oh, I've been trying to change bylaws forever." And they were, instead of reading what our current bylaws were, which by the way was essentially a pamphlet, they kept saying the same thing, which was, there was a set of ways that you had to change your bylaws, and it was just too cumbersome. But if you actually read the actual language, it wasn't that cumbersome. It was just a lot of unwritten rules they were agreed upon, but they were not set in stone. So we worked with a lawyer. We wrote proper bylaws. We went from a pamphlet to a 30-page document. Uh, we had one of our board meetings, which was supposed to be a very hands-on and engaging board meeting. Sorry, general meeting, which then was very well attended because of the excitement. The first half of it, unfortunately, was kind of a bait and switch, and we had our lawyer kind of read them what the bylaws were, get their feedback on it, and we sent that to them ahead of time. So they knew we were going to talk about bylaws, but it just went a little bit longer than they had expected. We made those edits, then we met again, and we passed those bylaws in May. So we went from talking about bylaws now for 2, 3, 4 administrations to 6 months to 5 months, and the bylaws were done. Then we started to establish a social media presence. We started to establish a hashtag campaigns. We started to track what the data was and be able to respond to what was gaining the most traction, to be able to build our social media following. Uh, we started to do more membership and growth work. And not necessarily in the sense that we were trying to attack membership, we were trying to attack what was the issue with membership. And what we found out was they were just tired of the same meetings all the time. So we started to create a more diverse plan for how we were going to be sharing or doing our meetings. So we were going to do more educational forward meetings. We were going to go and do dumplings one night and learn about breads another night. And you know what? It's May, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Let's go to a baseball game and just relax. So, we were doing different things that got people more excited about going. So they didn't feel like they were doing or watching the same thing over and over again. We also brought back certifications, which is weird to say because the ACF is supposed to be all about certifications, but it turns out for the last 20 years, if anyone in Pittsburgh wanted to get certified, they would have to go to a neighboring chapter. So they were still Pittsburgh chefs being certified, but not in Pittsburgh. So we we uh we established two locations for certifications. We established the first certification class, and in September, the certification class, we had five people go to the certifications, um, which again, bringing more excitement. We also had our first competition, sanctioned competition in nearly 20 years, getting students now excited. We're doing more targeted campaigns on the things that got people the most excited. We were doing more community outreach, and we started the apprenticeship, but that's something that Chef Metz wanted to do, and we are trying to restart our apprenticeship program because culinary schools are dying in Pittsburgh. So we've got now, I think we're down to two culinary schools, maybe three, but we used to have a big network of students, and once the students went away, membership dropped from 600 to about 100. So it was a big dip. And but with our community outreach, we created our 501c3, the Pittsburgh Culinary Initiative, which made donations to the Pittsburgh chapter a lot easier because now we're able to, work with our sister organization to take in donations, because to donate to a 501c6 is not tax deductible. So, and a lot of times people are not aware of that. So also, for kind of our coming out party for the 501c3, we fed over 8,500 people for Thanksgiving. And we're working with organizations across Pittsburgh. We're working with trucking companies, sports teams, universities, dining companies, where we're going to now expand that. We're feeding folks every month, and our Thanksgiving event is now going to increase dramatically. And that our initial event, the 8,500, was already the largest event in Pittsburgh. Uh, and then we, again, doing more collaborative workshops, uh, doing meetings in culinary schools, uh, really pushing our scholarship promotions, scholarship programming. Uh, and we also are bringing in young culinarians with committees. We're focused on going directly to them, getting them what they need, what they're excited about. Moving forward, we are also engaging with the community outside of Pittsburgh. So we opened up our awards to not just be those who are within the chapter, but we can nominate anyone outside of the chapter. Because what ended up happening was that the awards weren't as exciting as a lot of people wanted them to be, because it was just, whose turn was it, right? We just passed that award along. And I know that other chapters feel the exact same way because I've had conversations with other chapters. So we changed that. We ended up opening up the awards for anyone outside of Pittsburgh chapter. We actually had we then opened up new awards. So before, we had the food or the purveyor award, the chef of the year award, and then the recognition for where we were having our awards. Now we have the recognition, we have the chef of the year, we have the food purveyor, you have the educator of the year, and now we have the wine program of the year. The wine program of the year was won by someone who is not part of the ACF. So now that's an opportunity for them to be recognized, right? Just because if we're supposed to be the kind of the arbiter of the food scene in Pittsburgh, we're not honoring those who are doing the best job in Pittsburgh, then we're not really doing our jobs. So now this outside company gets to be excited about this award. They promote it, they talk about the ACF, they might join the ACF, right? Those are the opportunities that we're trying to create with membership without directly going after membership. And moving into 2025, we're looking to honor those that came before us, right? So we're in February 1st. We're doing an event for Master Chef Byron J. Barty. We're going to be honoring him at the Duquesne Club. So if anyone is around the area, love to have you there. Oh, also, I put forth this proposed timeline so everyone can see how we wanted to attack this. We're also doing more engagement and more partnerships with other organizations. We're doing more educational opportunities. So now we're doing serve safe classes for our membership. Every quarter, we're going to be doing a serve safe class they can sign up for, and then they can get a discounted rate. Uh, we're doing more competitions. We're going to be certifying evaluators in Pittsburgh. Again, first time that's been done in forever. We're going to be doing professional and student competitions every year, so we can begin to build the confidence of the students and the confidence of the professionals to want to go after national awards or maybe the Olympics. And then we're also going to be pursuing a bunch of national awards. So this year we've got about 6, 7, 8 people that's submitted for national awards. The chapter submitted for a national award. We have people who were submitted for the Herman G. Roosh Award. We have people that were submitted for the Presidential Medallion. So people started getting bought in. They started looking at awards. They started trying to be more involved with national and with the local chapter. Another thing that we did also is we got rid of the local tier. There is no more local chapter. That's not the national bylaws. So we felt like if you were a local member, you weren't getting the benefits of a national member, especially when it came to continuing education or um, or being able to renew your your certifications as easier. So we got rid of all that. So I ran through a lot of stuff, and that still didn't we still didn't touch on everything that we did last year, but that's what 2025 was like, or 2024 was like, rather. So I know I had like 15 minutes, so there's been 15 minutes.
No, you're great. I mean, you're obviously very engaged with your membership. I like your fact you're looking forward, forward thinking to see what, what new members and you're really listening to your membership and the community to try to better your chapter. So
Yeah,
congrats to you guys.
I
That's
appreciate it.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
like we feel like just to try to drive or do membership drives when there were still some glaring issues with the organization would just turn more people away, right? So before we tried to sell the product, which is the ACF, we had to fix the product. So we have to fix the product from within, and that's kind of been our philosophy. So, and I just announced to my board yesterday that I never intended of being a two-term president. Always intended to be a one-term president. So everything we're doing is just in one term. So last year was a year of change. This year is a year of refinement of that change and standardizing that change. So future presidents can walk in and know that they can just pick up, here's a playbook and run with it. And earlier when I talked about before we even started that we made all these changes and we ensured that these changes wouldn't go back to the way things were, is because in our bylaws we made sure to say that anyone who's running for president has to put forth an agenda similar to what I put forth. So that way we're voting on the substance of what they want to do to the chapter, not on whose turn is it or who's the most popular, right? So you have to put forth a budget, you have to put forth an agenda, and without that, you don't qualify to run. So people can actually think about what they want to do and not just say, "Hey, this would be a cool thing to put on my resume," because this is not a fun thing to do, right? This is work. We all know that. Uh, this is a nonprofit that we have to run like, like the laws of our state, of the country, make sure, want us to run it. This isn't a game. So we have to treat it as deadly serious as it is. And I'm really proud of what the board has done.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you, Chef.
Mark Brown, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Mark Brown. I'm currently a member of the Naples Coxsandra chapter, which is my president is Dave, who just introduced me. I've been a member of 7 chapters in my career so far. Hopefully, I don't move anymore, so that might stop at 7. But I've been a member of all different sizes of chapters. Small, like barely covering the minimum to actually say that you're a chapter, to larger ones like Atlanta and Naples, for that matter. I started a chapter. Dave was part of that as well in Fort Myers. So we had the one in Naples, and at one time we had one in Fort Myers as well. And so kind of going through the whole routine of starting a chapter, um, starting with like 2 or 3 people that have similar interests and trying to grow it to 20, trying to grow it to 30, and even beyond that, was very challenging, to say the least. But Chef Chris, you're very organized. Thank you. That was awesome. You're right. The leadership of the chapter is obviously where it all starts. Um, having a succession plan ahead of you or chapter is huge as well. I'm not nearly as prepared for this conversation as Chef Chris was, so I'm going to shoot from the hip a little more, and I'll rely on Dave to bail me out here and there. But just kind of like thinking back on even like starting that Fort Myers chapter or some of these other struggling chapters I've been involved with. I've been a president of two chapters, and both of them were very small chapters. Um, and just trying to like sustain, was such a daily headache. Um, to get to that next meeting and have more than five people to make it worth anybody's time to go there. But currently I live in the winter. I live in a small town north of Fort Myers, and my chapter meetings are in Naples. So I'm driving an hour plus each direction. And as I've been told by uh, Chef Timmons, while he was a member of our chapter years ago, while he was still with us, he said, "Chef, I drive past a lot of bars to come to a meeting here. You better make it worth my time." And I drive past a tremendous amount of bars to go to a meeting in Naples, and it's for multiple reasons that I go. It's to see my friends, but in addition to that, it's also for the networking, for the content, for finding future employees to that point. There's a lot of value to me. I've been a member of ACF since '91, right around there. Um, and it's grown my career, but it's the career path I chose too. And so to define that to younger kids, or I'll reach out to some of the chefs up in the Fort Myers area, like, "Hey, you want to go to a meeting down in Naples with me?" And they're like, "Chef, you want to go to a meeting? That sounds how boring could that be?" And so the value of these meetings has to be pretty high to get people to try. Do you agree, Dave? I mean, it's like the education part for a lot of the people that have been in their career choice for a long time doesn't really capture them. It's that education element is more for like that younger student a lot of times, or the early on. But just that pure time of engaging with fellow culinarians and your like interest friends is why I make the drive. In the summer, I'm in New Hampshire, working at a seasonal club up there. And, I try to attend some of the meetings up there as well. It's a little more challenging, but just because the time constraints with work. But, I'm a kind of a go-getter with ACF when it comes to like making the drive. When we started the chapter in Fort Myers, a lot of solely the way we got people in the door to come into the meetings was to show up to their place of employment and really kind of talk to them about it. And even like, club chefs and education oriented chefs and hotel chefs, they kind of know about it. But then you try to get into the public restaurant chefs, and it's kind of on the outside to them. Or if they went to a culinary school, they heard about it from their teacher and they kind of forgot about it, or they had the 1 year membership and they never looked back on it again. But we would show up to restaurants, we'd show up to clubs, and really kind of give it the hard sell, like, "Hey, give it a try, show up a couple times, see what you think." And still to this day, some of my best friends are from that early years of starting that chapter. It's like I can still reach out to any number of them and ask for a hand or a recipe. Um, so that's kind of the driving force for me. And the younger people I have working for me now, they see the value in it to some degree, but I think a lot of them are like, "Well, if I leave clubs or if I leave resorts, does a certification mean anything? Or is this resume building of doing these competitions doing anything for me?" A good example is my son. He was working at Cherokee Town and Country Club, and they went to Chevy Chase in Maryland, and he's like, "I want to go to public restaurants." And so he kind of left ACF behind, and he'd done the competitions and student chef and all that type of stuff. And he just didn't see the value in it. And now he's back in clubs. And I'm like, well, if you want to take that next step, you probably should really entertain the thought of going through certification. And, I don't know. It's a hard sell for this generation, this younger generation. So.
So Mark, I met you in 2010 and you were going through the Fort Myers chapter and the biggest push. So Mark Brown it was one of the only places we could do certifications. So that's where I saw the ACF in 2010 as my source of, or my sense of appeal that's where I wanted to be. That's why I wanted to be certified. I wanted to see what I could do. I wanted to be with the best chefs of the area at the most elite clubs in the area. So Mark Brown was at the sanctuary, and he was the only place that actually offered certification, which was an hour and a half drive from my house. So it was a
Yeah,
long drive. We had to truck people in from Sarasota to come and do the evaluations.
right.
Now, because of what you started, Mark, that's why I wanted you involved in this. We have 16 evaluators in our chapter of what you started when you only had two. So
Yeah, and to
thank you
that
for doing
point, that was a good point there, is when I first moved to Fort Myers area, um, there was only a handful of certified chefs.
it.
Like I joined, we started that chapter, and I was the only CEC in that chapter for many years, and I didn't like that. That's not what you want. But you're right. There was value. That was a value sale right there to get people involved in the chapter. We would, I mean, as you recall, Dave, we would do uh, training sessions on like, hey, this isn't a chapter wide thing. If you want to do your certification and you want to see how to actually break down a chicken and not the way you've seen it on, the Galloping Gourmet, then come to this, and we'll bring in, we brought in Chef Timmons and some other guys in the area, and they showed the proper way of doing things. And if you left there and you're like, yeah, I want to do certification, that's great. If you left there and said, hey, I learned how to break down a chicken and I have no interest in doing it, that's great too. And there was definitely people in both camps. But yeah, when we started kind of getting the ball rolling in Fort Myers, our goal was to make the Fort Myers chapter, that Southwest Florida chapter, the accreditation chapter for the area. And so we put the evaluators in place, we put the facility in place, because like you had said, if you're driving to the other coast or you're going down to Miami to take the practical, and it was hard for people to do. And then there was no resource in the area for them too. They didn't understand what Paisan was, and so you had that resource there for them. So that was a big piece of the puzzle. It's like building a city. You have to have all those components to it to get there. And now, again, like you were saying before, our chapter in Naples is a big chapter, and it's still losing membership. We could sit here and come up with a lot of reasons why chapters are losing membership, but I there's a lot of attrition in work, this line of work that we do. And I think back to like when I went to culinary school. I had three roommates, myself and would be four. And within a few years after culinary school, I was the only one still cooking. And that was a few years ago that I went to culinary school. But now it's just as bad, and I look at some of these kids that come through my kitchen, I'm like, a couple of years, you're either too smart to be doing this, you're going to do something else where you actually can get ahead faster, or you're just going to wash out because it's not thing for you. You don't have the feel. Um, so it's tough, and Naples for that matter, and Dave, you can attest to this. People are in and out. Like they come in, they get a club chef job, which is probably 5,000 clubs in Naples area, and they get a club chef job. They last a couple years. They get burned out on it because it's not an easy market, and you move on. And so you get them for a couple years and they're gone. The ones that stay forever are not the norm. So, and the other problem too, when you get into these big chapters, and I had this problem when I was in Atlanta, is I show up to the meetings. I know maybe one or two people, and they're not always. I think that chapters in general, especially larger ones, could do better with inoculating people in. Like opening the arm and bringing them into their circle instead of just seeing your friends that you haven't seen in a month because you're at a meeting.
Yeah, and beyond the certification, which I don't know if it's got a decline in ACF, that'd be an interesting question for national office? Or are we seeing an incline in people that want to be certified? I mean, every year, we do the August, September, October, May or June, August, September, practical evaluations, and then I proctor the written evaluations. And we seem to sell out. There's always 4 to 6 candidates every single one. So that's a good sign that we're still steady in this particular market.
Yeah.
But you do have the private clubs that are supporting that. So what's the next step is my question is what's the next step for, beyond certification, what's that next step? And going to the Pittsburgh chapter, Chris, I mean, you're trying a variety of ideas to get it to engage people, including awarding people that aren't members. In our bylaws, you have to be a member to get Chef of the Year. You have to be a member to be Pastry Chef of the Year. Like that's part of our bylaws. So
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, first of all, Chef Mark, uh, before I came to Pittsburgh for culinary school, I lived in Fort Myers and Cape Coral. So like, it's really cool to hear that hear about all these different things that was going on right as I left in 2009. I'm like, damn, I could have just really flourished down there. So I think I left a little early, but I'm really happy of about where I am. But like, I mean, it's exactly as Chef Mark said, right? You have to invest your time, energy, and money into that next generation. I think one of the issues, I think to me is a glaring issue with the ACF, is that there was a whole generation after, the Ferdinand Metzes and all those big time chefs that like essentially started and managed and ran the ACF that was just kind of living in that limelight. And this isn't in any way to put down any past chef, any past president, nothing of the sort. The truth is that, like, in my career, I had very little to no input from the ACF. And every chef in my demographic is the exact same way, right? There was a whole generation of chefs that the ACF really didn't have an impact on. And then they became successful in their own right. So then those who are coming down, who are coming through the ranks underneath them are going, hey, is the ACF worth it? And they're going, wasn't for me, right? So like, I think because of that missed opportunity with the millennials, which is now the largest voting bloc, the largest demographic bloc behind only the boomers, that's a huge missed opportunity. So investing in your next generation is incredibly important. So what some of the things that we're doing is that we're restructuring our financial situation, and we're creating what we're calling the Culinary Almoners Fund. In other words, in the event that because again, to answer that question, what is the ACF doing for me? Because we're paying 200 at the time $260 a year, which, as far as I know, we were the most expensive chapter in the United States. Why to come to 10 meetings? It's kind of crazy when the meetings were boring, right? And then beyond that, what would the ACF do for them? And everyone had the exact same answer. Like I said before, they're like, yeah, it's the wrong mindset to have, but I think it's the right mindset to have personally, because if you are working in an industry, as we know, does not respect your personal time, does not respect holidays, does not respect weddings, does not respect birthdays, because we are all bought into taking care of other people for those special occasions. We don't really care about that for ourselves. We're a very selfless bunch because we want to serve others. That's the point of being a chef, right? So what we're trying to do is how do we serve them? So the Almoners Fund. So for example, Chef David, your car breaks down, you're having a tough time right now, and you just need the car to get back to work. You could petition the ACF. It's a very closed system. Only 3 people would have access: the treasurer, the president, the vice president. That's it. No one else will know where the funds go or anything like that. And if you can say, hey, I just need $300, and then so we will give the repair shop $300 for your car, right? Or we will buy gift cards for groceries if you're a single parent and you lost your job, right? Whatever it is. As opposed to people saying, you know what, it's not worth being an ACF member. Times are tight, money's tight. I just need to, or times are tough rather. I just need to go and focus on life instead of the ACF. Now the ACF can step in and help out when need be. And I understand not all chapters can do that, but it's just our way of trying to figure out how can we solve for what has the ACF done for me lately, because it's not worth it. When you have 6 days that you're working, you have one day off. Why would you want to spend it at a meeting? Right?
So I definitely want to interject on this one. I
Yeah,
cannot
please.
wait for our meeting next Monday at a local bakery. I'm going to see people I haven't seen through the holidays because of us working. I really look forward to the event. We have probably 86 people signed up for it right
Oh
now.
yeah.
So
That's
it's
hell
probably
of
going to grow
engagement.
more. Today I was making phone calls to different purveyors to get more products, so it's easier around the establishment. But we're going to be able to tour that whole bakery. We're going to see where all the desserts come from, and it's going to be one of the best nights for him because he's going to sell out on desserts. Everyone's going to get buy desserts, bring them home, breads, and just
Yep.
see each other and have a great time. You know,
And
and
that's
and
exactly right.
you
Right.
know, and I'm
Yep.
trying to make arrangements for the football game to be played there. And whatever. But
No, I think that's exactly the route you should be going, right?
yeah,
Look at local establishments, work with them, right? Because if you invest in your local establishments, you're investing in your local economy, you're strengthening your local economy, right? The same thing with your young generation and having cool things like doing football games, right? And baseball games like we did here in Pittsburgh. Like that is exactly what you should be doing. Make it fun. If you're going to spend your only day off going to a meeting, let's make it fun. If you have 80 people you can go hang out with, you're eating all this sugar, you're drinking beer, you're watching football, whatever it is, that's exactly the route you should be going. So kudos to you for doing that.
yeah. And we're
Yeah,
building our calendar. So the point of the meeting is to build the calendar for the year. So people that want to host meetings, want to show off their club, want to show off their staff and what
yeah.
they're doing and all the improvements they've done to their clubs and just a wine dinner. If they want to host a wine dinner, that's the time to book it. I'll book it right on the calendar. We'll get it set and we're done.
Yeah. That's
So
another thing that we did is that we pretty much booked all of 2025.
yeah.
So the goal is that when I leave office, I'll have most of 2026 booked. So the next president doesn't have to scramble and figure out meetings last minute, right? So everyone is kind of working together for that next group. And I think instilling that mindset, exactly like you're doing, is what you should be doing. And I think that the ACF as a whole needs to do that. And I think we're on our way to doing that, right? There's a lot of changes that are happening nationally. Some people may agree with it, may not agree with it, but like the fact of the matter is these changes need to happen, right? And I think our chapters need to change as well. Like chapters that are struggling, we need to look at ourselves because Pittsburgh was struggling. I would say we're still struggling, right? We need to look at ourselves and go, what is it about us that isn't working? And let's change it. Like there's one thing to be respectful of tradition, there's another thing to be shackled by it.
Sorry. Go ahead, Mark. Say something. I gotta sneeze.
Well, yeah, I like the direction of the Pittsburgh chapter with trying to get people in and retain and things like that. And it's hard. Again, you go back to like the students. When I was a student culinarian, they gave you the first year or two, maybe the whole time you were a student, you got it for free. And but if you didn't show up to the meetings and you didn't understand and you didn't have a buy-in, I fortunately worked for chefs that had, that were on the national team and that were uh, working towards attaining their CMC. And I looked at that like, wow, this is a career path. And kind of like what you were saying, Dave, it's like you show a career path to these young people and you can capture them and keep them involved. But when you're 20 years old, 25 years old, even, and you're just barely paying your cell phone bill and water bill and your Hulu, Netflix,
Mhm.
Amazon, Disney subscriptions, it's hard to find the money to pay for an ACF membership.
That's true. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's we work in almost a cultish environment where you're underpaid, you're overworked, but you worship this person that's abusive to you, and
Yes.
and then
You're
and
so
then this
right.
person wants you to go to a party with them on Monday that you're off, and it's like the last thing I want to do is spend time with you, chef.
Yeah.
So so
God, you're
it
so right.
and not that we should compare ourselves to CMAA, but the way that they structure their meetings was definitely different. They have the educational aspect and they have the social meetings and things like that. And maybe we should take notes from some of these other organizations, not just CMAA, but other organizations. But again, ACF is trying to, as a national level, they're trying to, come into the new century that was 25 years ago, and
Yeah,
we're getting there. And again, I think it's just trying to put your finger on how to communicate with the multiple generations that we are trying to serve. Dave will be the first one to tell you at our meetings, we have a guy that's been a member since 1979 that sits in the back of the room and heckles you the whole time.
that's awesome.
It's like, come on, it's like you got to try to placate to a very wide audience, and and you're going to upset somebody along the way, and that's okay.
Yeah,
So
You know,
CMA is a great opportunity. So
yeah.
I've been a member from CMA for 10 years, and I'm trying to coordinate education with their education. But their meetings are on the second Monday of the month, and we're on the third Monday of the month, so it's very difficult. But it's another opportunity to see an organization because they're very successful. However, their clubs are sponsoring their membership, and it's not cheap. I mean, you're
That's
talking
true.
$1,200. It cost me $1,200 last year.
Yeah, that's a
well,
lot of money.
and you think about the other, here's a flip side to the equation. You think about this younger generation that's in culinary schools, and you say, oh, who do who do you idolize? What books are you reading? Nobody's reading an ACF chef's books. They're all reading Keller and all these celebrity chefs or very high performing chefs, and we don't have that superhero in our ranks.
True.
We've given free memberships or like honorary memberships to these guys, but they're not going out there and banging the bushes for us and doing anything for us. So we have this whole batch of master chefs that could be that superhero for the younger generation, but how do we get that in front of them? How do we make
Great
that
point.
our statement?
It's a great point. That's a tough one to answer. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's no, like I went to school with a whole host of students that idolized TV chefs, right? And TV chefs aren't ACF chefs. It would be nice if there was a TV chef that was an ACF chef, right? It would be nice if, Martin Yen came to the ACF convention. It'd be nice if he was on TV going like, I'm an ACF chef and here's why, right? Yeah, it's having a CMC being in the limelight. I think that would be incredibly influential because unless like I don't know how many people still in the industry that I've talked to that I was like, hey, did you watch the Olympics? They go, oh yeah, that was the breakdancing lady. I was like, no, 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 the culinary Olympics, and they had no idea that the culinary Olympics even existed, right? Um, I think we do a really bad job at talking about ourselves as an industry, right? I was just having a conversation with a group of legislators. Uh, we are like in Pennsylvania, hospitality, travel and leisure is the number two generator of revenue for the state, behind only agriculture, where we receive next to nothing in the budget. It's like less than 1/10 of 1%. Right. I was talking to some folks in Colorado. Colorado State Energy Office gave the Colorado Tourism Office $4.8 million to invest in the hospitality industry. Hospitality industry, in turn, turned that around into $1.8 billion in tax revenue. Yet we are still considered low class, uh, unskilled labor. We're an economic powerhouse. We don't talk about it. We don't push it. We still act like we're, those uneducated folks, but we are, when we are sitting in like the Marriotts of the world, right? Hospitality, like the food sector part of it has the biggest budget, right? But we still act like we are, just the back of the house. We need to really assert ourselves out into the public space. That's what we tried doing with the Pittsburgh Culinary Initiative, and I'm hoping the ACF does that as well publicly.
Well, I think we touched on a lot of subjects. I think we hopefully gave some ideas that people can implement in their own chapters, have discussions amongst their boards, and maybe and give a little freshness to their conversations at the next general meetings. Um, I sure hope that it helped with next Monday. I mean, I'm extremely excited, right? I can't wait to go see the magic. And I'm thinking about it. And the workers, the people that work, 80 hours plus a week, they're there, they're at the meeting, and you can see it in their eyes, like, wow, we
Yeah, they're bought in.
appreciate this is who we're feeding. It's almost like going into a dining room that you haven't been into in a long time and seeing your guests and them appreciating you. Say Valentine's Day is a great example. New Year's Eve, you bring the staff out, you get a nice round of applause, gives you goosebumps. You put an eye to that mouth that you're feeding every single day. And I think it drives a little more passion and a little more care to what you're preparing on the dish. So
Yeah.
that interaction between the front of the house, back of the house, it's got to be one. It's got to be one. So let's get our chefs out there. Let's move the kitchen into the dining room and actually prepare the dishes for the people, just like you would do at an ACF meeting. And that's basically what we do. We don't do sit down dinners. Very, very seldom do we do that. Um, so I think that's a way to engage as well.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I will say to your meeting, I just remembered our meeting in 2 weeks is a bourbon tasting. So like I'm really excited for that. Bourbon tasting and pairing. So yeah, anytime you can interject some alcohol, it's gonna be a good time.
Does anybody have any questions or any further comments?
All right, good talk. Well, I appreciate the hospitality. Thank you for bringing me on here. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. President, acfpittsburgh.org.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Dave, and I look forward to the meeting next week as well.
Okay.
I appreciate you all.
All right. Thank you very much. Everybody has a wonderful evening.
All right,
Happy
chefs.
New Year.
Happy New Year.